Hey Book Force, welcome to Some Assembly Required, the G.I. Joe book tutorial series that covers painting, detailing, and customization of your action figures, and of course, your G.I. Joes.
It's Jimmy here for Some Assembly Required in the first of what will hopefully be many tutorial videos. And what we've got today is a tutorial for how to build a diorama base for your action figures, vehicles, etc. Just like the one you can see here. So in this first video, we're going to go through the materials that I use and build the basic structure of the diorama, showing you just how simple it is to create these things from basically very cheap everyday objects and materials. So this is another example of what's possible with these techniques. This is obviously a base for 1/18 scale small vehicles or multiple figures. It also works with other scales, such as Gundam 1/144. Then we've got 1/18 scale bases for single figures, like this little Colonial Smart Gunner. See, that's what we're trying to achieve. And show you the scalability of it, it also works, the same techniques work on something like Warhammer scale miniatures. For basing, it's pretty much exactly the same stuff, exactly the same techniques, just at a different size. As you'll come to see, these techniques are very, very simple, almost idiot-proof, which is exactly why I'm showing you. So as we clear the decks, I'm going to go through the materials. And the principal material that we use is this. It's insulation foam. Many used in the building industry, obviously, for stick it in between walls, under floors. Get it from builders merchants. It goes under different trade names. UK is things like Kingspan, Ecotherm. I think you can get Kingspan all over the world. And so unlike standard polystyrene foam, which is made up of small balls, this stuff's made up of tiny particles which, when you sort of break apart, they sort of naturally form really realistic looking rock, concrete, brickwork type texture. So it takes away a lot of the work for you. We're also going to be using bog standard polyfiller, also PVA glue, a bit of fine sand, finer the better I find, and a load of cheap paint. Any old paint will do. This stuff's from the supermarket. It's kids poster paint, different colours, multiple colours, doesn't matter. Mix it up, make different kinds of shades and tones. And then on top of that, tester pots, emulsion tester pots, Then some cheap spray paint. And for smaller rubble and detail, we've got this. It's a smashed up Welsh slate tile. Get it from the builders merchants. And as you can see, close up, if we get in focus, it's got a natural layered texture to it. So when you break it apart, those layers become exposed. It's really good for catching highlights when you dry brush with it. So we've got multiple sizes here. We'll use it all from the fine particles to the larger bits. Then this is an example of texture paint that we're going to make from all these. So the consistency, as you can see, is kind of like chocolate mousse. That's what you want for applying it. You don't want it too runny, don't want it too firm. You want it just right. So now I'm going to show you what you need for the actual base itself. And I use a lot of these MDF offcuts. You can use plain timber, plyboard, Anything that just gives it a bit of weight, really. Okay, so here we are introducing our foam to the board. And how we do that, well, how I do that, is with this stuff. Flexible filler, often called cork. It's what you use for filling gaps between skirting boards and down the corners of walls and stuff for decorating. But because it's non-toxic, it's water-based, it doesn't react with a foam. So it's really good to use. If this foam reacts with other solvents, it can give off pretty nasty fumes and also melt. So this stuff's great. What I'm doing is lining the board up with the square edges. It's basically, I want it to sort of a smooth edge all the way around. So just apply it liberally, blob it on. It doesn't matter if it squeezes out the sides, because, well, that's what it's designed to do. You sort of wipe it away with your finger, it leaves a smooth line. So if you do, it's better to push it right to the edge with a gun and squeeze it out and fill that gap, as you can see. There you go, squidging it down. Make sure the edges are sort of lined up. Apply a bit of pressure. Wipe it away. Just like that. Doesn't cure quickly, so you can adjust it for quite a while afterwards, which is a good thing. It's not like sort of super glue or hot gun glue, which sets really quick. This gives you plenty of time to work with. Then once that's done, you want to weight it down. I use sort of heavy toolboxes. You can use a pile of books, whatever. Leave it for at least a couple of hours. I like to leave it overnight, preferably, so it really properly cures. And look, as if by magic, I've got one pre-prepared. So what I've done here is basically the overhanging foam, like that. I've taken a just your bog standard multi-saw, squared off the edges, give yourself some cutting lines so you don't veer off and end up with a wonky edge. And then from these lines, you quite easily cut it down to a fairly decent standard. The good thing about this stuff is that it's also sandable. So if you do, if your lines aren't too neat, it's easily sorted and smoothed down. You want it as smooth as you can. We're going to fill it and sand it later on, but you know, half the battle is the preparation work for further down the line. Like I'm saying here, yeah, it's sandable, so you can get it quite smooth, which is great for the edging like I'm doing here. Or it's also great if you want a smooth concrete structure or something like that, or a plastered rendered wall. You can leave it as smooth or as rough as you want. Much better than the polystyrene foam, believe me. So now we're coming up to the marking out stage, which is where you want your reference material. I like to use a fair bit of reference material. You want an idea of how you want it to look, basically, from stealing other people's ideas. And also bring your whichever figures or vehicles or whatever you're displaying on this into use as sort of scale references. And it's also where you want things positioned in a basic roundabout way. You know, this is a fun section. You sort of play around with how you want it to look. At this time, it's not set in stone. You just want a basic understanding of where you're heading. I reckon sometimes if you try and wing it too much, you get a 50-50 chance of success. This is the time to really set in stone how you want it to look. So what I've got here is the original foam that we're using on the base is 100 mil, or 4 inches for my American friends. I've cut that in half, so I pretty much worked out that this scale, a 2-inch wall, the scale being 1:6, a 2-inch wall would be 2 foot, which for a thick concrete structure I thought was just about right. So working out where I want this wall, and I think it's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing if you don't set it square like that, square to the edge, and kind of have your structures off an angle. It looks a little bit more like it's a cross-section of reality, this little diorama base. It fools the eye a little bit more. So I'm sort of working out where I want a change in level as well at the front. Move Mr. Sebastian Blood out of the way. So before we start the marking out process, these foam insulation boards tend to come backed. So they've either got a foil back or like this one, a paper back. And you want to peel that off. They peel off pretty simply. We don't need that. We'll get rid of that. But what it leaves behind is quite a nice texture. It looks like sort of aged concrete. And so here we go. We get our wall sections. And just start marking out where you want them in relation to where you want your figure. What we're trying to create with these lines as well is at the front we're doing a change of depth. We're going to have a little curve that drops down. Then in the area behind the wall, we want to start breaking up that large negative space. Well, I hope that's the right term. I know Paulie the artist will probably chastise me for using that as a wrong term. But negative space, I think, is kind of like the area between the subjects. So we've got a big section behind the wall. We're going to try and put some joint lines for where concrete slabs would meet. We're going to put some lintel stones around the wall. Just think about the scale you're basically working at. Say for the doorway, a standard doorway is about 900mm. So you take that figure and divide it by the scale. So the scale here is 1:6, so you'd have 900 divided by 6, and you'd get, well, you do the math, but that's how you sort of work out the right dimensions for things for your particular scale. And here we're just sort of, we've cut a curve at the front, as you can see. We're just keeping it flush with the wall. So what we're doing here is just figuring out how long we want things like curbstones and that in relation to each other. So you sort of want to split the difference here and there. You want the pattern on the floor created by slab joints to look not necessarily natural, but just aesthetically pleasing, I guess. Rather than doing it just a square grid. Kind of break it up a little bit. Again, reference material is always key for this kind of thing. When you got such a large diorama as this, with not a lot happening really, we just got a wall and a floor. These lines are going to make a big difference. Although a lot of it will be covered up with rubble, it's still worth putting in the time to kind of create something that's a little bit interesting, shall we say. You'll see when we start dry brushing and creating shadow and highlights, they become worth their weight in gold, these little lines. So around the edges here, just sort of line up your wall where you want it, and then mark from beneath where it's flush with the edge. run those marking lines up the side, and as you can see, you get a nice profile down the side. Same on the other side. And then behind it, I've used a bit of an offcut to make sort of retain it behind that wall. Okay, once we've got our basic structure in place and worked out, we're going to use these bamboo kebab skewers. These are going to act as the reinforcing pins for when we glue it down with our old friend, the cork flexible filler. You pierce the walls with these, you go straight through and then into the base. You kind of necessary. You think how sort of fragile this is without them. You can use something else, you can use any kind of stick, I guess. These edges, they're going to be sort of blended in later on with a filler into the base. You see where we've got sort of a profile down the edge. And then bring old Sebastian back in, because now you want to mark out exactly where you want it sort of break off the top of the wall to create that sort of damaged effect. Both sides we're going to do a nice wobbly line. So it looks random, but creating randomness is actually quite difficult. There's a skill or an art to being random. Well, that's it for this first episode. Join us again for part 2, where we're going to get into details.
Yo, Joe Berg. A huge shout out and thank you to our G.I. Joe Berg Honor Roll Patreon members. You guys really help make these videos possible, and I really love and appreciate all of your support. Thank you. If you or a friend or a family member would like to join our Patreon Honor Roll, please check out the link below for exclusive discounts and early access to content, as well as a few other surprises here and there. Looking for a really cool G.I. Joe Berg t-shirt or mug or sticker or tights? Well, go and check out our G.I. Joe Berg Teespring link below. G.I. Joe Berg Patreons get exclusive discounts and access to top secret merchandise designs. So, what are you waiting for? Go check it out.